At some point in your life, have you ever felt a sense of unease, a feeling that you didn't belong? You could have been accidentally underdressed for a party or surrounded by people at a meeting that all knew each other but made you feel invisible. A sense of not belonging has happened to all of us, and those moments evoke negative feelings and concern. Now, imagine feeling like you didn't belong on a board of directors that you just joined. What do you think you would do? Would you stay on that board? Would you feel like you had the power to speak freely? When board members feel like they don't belong, boards often lose valuable board members, or they lose the expertise and varied perspectives that could lead to more innovative and effective decision making. I'm excited because I'm joined today by Lesley Rawlings of Beloved Community. Now, welcome, Lesley.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited about this conversation because we are talking about belongingness and what that means. Can you define for us what belongingness actually means on a board of directors?
Absolutely. When I'm thinking about belongingness, I really like to anchor it in a conversation around co-creation of space. Thinking about designing the space in which we share, the way in which we work and come together in community as a board in a way that really serves every participant and makes it clear that they are all equally important members of a community. So there are a number of ways that this shows up when you think about what it looks like to feel a sense of belonging or what might make someone feel a bit othered or on the outside in a board. So when you think, for instance, particularly about nonprofits, many times nonprofit boards will name the importance of having community voice and representation as a part of their board. However, the way in which they engage with board members is not necessarily equal, is not necessarily the same, and will leave members of the community feeling as though you brought me here, but I don't really belong here. That could show up in having things like a financial requirement or obligation to be a part of the board, and saying that, okay, if you want to be here, that's great, but you need to bring in X dollars to the organization when not every member of the board may be capable of doing that. Or it could look like valuing the opinions and insights of board members who have philanthropic connections at a higher level than those who might only be bringing their skill set, their talents, and their expertise to the space, right? So those are ways in which boards can operate and create a sense of othering or send signals that people don't belong, even when they have named the importance of having diversity and having representation.
Okay, so Lesley, those are some incredibly great points because a lot of those things that we've done traditionally for years on our boards, and that's all we know. So thank you for bringing that to light. So knowing that that is what belongingness is and how it's different from inclusion, can you talk about why that is so important that we understand those distinctions and why it's important to ensure that that is an integral part of how we operate as a board?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'll say that first, belongingness is a factor of inclusion. I tend to think about belongingness as getting a little bit deeper into the world of inclusion because inclusion is broad. It can be a lot of things, ranging from having effective and inclusive communications. So using folks' chosen pronouns, using folks' chosen name. It can be having shared voice and shared decision making within an organization. That is a signal of inclusion. It can be things like having culturally relevant spaces and culturally relevant interactions, right? So having a sense of belongingness, it gets at that. It's a part of that larger pie of inclusion. And you really have to have deep sense of belongingness if you want to get to retention in your boards, in your workplace, etc. Oftentimes we have folks who will name the importance of having diversity and representation, right? From a Beloved Community standpoint, the place that most organizations are at when they come to us is saying, I want to increase diversity within my board, within my staff. However, they haven't yet started to think about what is actually going to keep those folks there. What will make folks say, yes, I want to continue to be in this space with these other folks. And they only are going to get to that place of choosing to return, choosing to remain in relationship when they feel a strong sense of belonging.
Lesley, that is so good. That is so good. And it seems like such a heavy task to do So how do we know when we are cultivating a sense of belongingness? What does that look like? How do you actually measure what seems like feelings, but actually a sense of belongingness?
Yeah. The first thing I often tell folks to do is to simply ask people. So even though it can seem like it's not a deep or tangible measurement by asking folks and surveying folks around their feelings, it actually is very, very valid, right? It's no different than qualitative research. So really thinking about asking folks and creating space for folks to tell you, do I feel like I belong here? Many employee engagement or climate surveys will have some type of belongingness questions, ranging from the old school, do I have a best friend at work, to ones that are a lot more nuanced now. So you can have your board members do annual surveys and include a whole host of questions, but ensure that there are some questions around belongingness on there as one of the very first ways to be able to get a sense of, do folks feel like they belong? I would name that the second step after that is that if you're getting results that say, no, actually, I don't feel like I belong here, the only way that you're going to get clarity on why that is and what things would create a sense of belonging is going to be to get deeper in conversation with those folks and create safe space for them to be able to say, here is how I'm experiencing engaging in the board, right? So you might hear them say things like, I am a working parent, and these board meetings are always in conflict with the times that I need to be present with my child. So I actually don't feel like I belong because we don't have these meetings at times that I can easily access them or are very disruptive to my life. Or you might have someone who is differently abled who might say, I am not feeling like I belong because English is not my first language, and we never have any bilingual communications. We never have access to translation. Or I have a hearing impairment, and we never have closed captioning when we connect via Zoom, right? Those are all things that folks will say to you. I don't feel like this space was designed for me because of these things. And then you can actually make tangible, discrete changes that actually cultivate sense of belonging.
Thank you so much, Lesley. That conversation was very informative, and it seems like a lot, but we don't have to assume anything. We can all take those very practical first steps to ensure that we all cultivate a sense of belonging on our boards. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.